Hello, stream. Okay. We're back to it. Chapter 34. They stopped in the main courtyard, the royal guard still in a protective ring around Enelin. Lauren and the others came to a halt nearby, and with a sharp gesture, Enelin beckoned them forwards. There's another entrance we mean to try, she said. The rear gate is smaller and more easily defended. The Shades might have ignored it, focusing their strength instead on the wider front gate. But then again, they might not, said Lauren. Your Majesty, let us find some way to get you to safety other than force of arms, for I do not think that will serve us. She is informing you, not asking for your counsel, said the Lord Chancellor. As a courtesy you should be grateful for. If we escape to the east, that only means it will be even harder to make for the western docks and escape, Chet said angrily. Your duty is to save the High King, not die gloriously in battle beside her. The Lord Chancellor's face turned ugly, his voice to a low snarl. I know my duty, boy. I wager... I guess you probably can't hear it on stream, but my family is listening to music downstairs at a decent volume, which I thought would show up on stream. And it's a pretty good danceable song. I know my duty, boy. I wager I have had it longer than you have been alive. Oh, shoot. Lights. It's getting so dark in here right now. Enelin silenced him with a stern look and turned to Lauren. There is a hidden entrance, but it runs from the palace to the eastern docks. Those docks are currently occupied by the Dalmoon fleet. Our foes have planned their attack well, and likely they were long in concocting their strategy. These men know their way about a battle. Put your faith in them. Put your faith in the light. The sound of tramping boots filled the air, and a fresh group of palace soldiers marched into the courtyard to join them. There are the reinforcements, said the Lord Chancellor. Your Majesty, we should be moving. Hello, Xenon Quark. Oh boy, after your recent flurry of Twitch emotes, I'm very nervous. I must admit. He led them on back into another wing of the palace that Lauren had never explored. She soon got herself turned around and lost, and resigned herself to following the armored backs of the soldiers before her. Yes, you can, Xenon Quark, but make sure to tag as you post it that it's probably NSFW. If it is, which it probably is, right? Again, just saying, based on your emotes posted in the past. Oh boy. Oh, the children are killing each other again. Shun became turned around and lost and resigned herself following the armored backs of the soldiers before her. Alright, let's see it. Okay, so not safe for work, but terrible for a different reason. Did I say not safe for work? Not safe for work, but terrible for a different reason. She soon became turned around and lost and resigned herself to following the armored backs of the soldiers before her. Before long, they pushed through another smaller door and found themselves in a narrow open space between the back of the palace and the eastern wall. There was the gate, smaller than the one to the west. Above, guards on the wall loosed arrows at unseen foes on the other side, but they could scarcely peek out from the battlements without having to duck a hail of enemy fire. It looks as though there are many of them beyond the gate, Lauren called out. Let us hope not enough, said the Lord Prince. Open the gate. The shout went up the wall, and guardsmen in the gatehouse leaned to the wheel. With the groaning of chains, the gate swung slowly inwards. Almost at once, Lauren saw swords and spear tips pushed through the gap. Aemon held his sword aloft and gave a battle cry. The palace guards charged into the fray, and the shades were thrown back from the wall. They turned in a rout, many fleeing into the streets and vanishing into the alleys of the city. Some of their captains managed to rally, and slowly the gray and blue uniforms came together once more. The Lord Prince's charge stalled, and the palace guards were pushed into a circle against the wall. Lauren and her friends could not get through the gates, for it was blocked by armored bodies. They cannot get through, said Jem. They will be cut down. Lauren did not answer him, but looked at Chet, and in his eyes she saw the same fear. Dread seized her heart. She had brought the enemy here and doomed the High King, and now she was powerless to save them. Shadeborn, 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 Shadeborn. A chant had begun to build beyond the wall. Lauren quailed, for she recognized the word. That was what Rogan had called himself when they met in Dorsey. She craned her neck, and above the fighting she saw him. He had pressed through his troops to stand at their head, blocking the High King's escape into the city. Shadeborn, Shadeborn, Shadeborn. Bolstered by their captain, the Shades were pressing forwards in earnest, and the palace guard were forced back through the gate. She saw the Lord Chancellor hacking desperately, trying to cut a path through the enemy. With a cry of rage, he threw himself forwards, attacking Rogan himself. His blade caught in the hook of Rogan's axe and was turned aside. Then they danced, the Lord Chancellor striking with sword and shield both, while Rogan held his axe in both hands, his shield slung across his back. With the haft of it, he blocked strike after strike, the Lord Chancellor pressing forwards, but Lauren could see Rogan smile beneath his helmet. He was toying with the mystic, drawing him out and into the midst of his army. A sword came swinging from the left, and the Lord Chancellor caught it on his shield, but in that moment's distraction, Rogan struck. His axe came down a punishing blow that the Lord Chancellor barely avoided. But he was off his balance now, and Rogan pressed him back. Where before they had been matched blow for blow, now Rogan's axe was a blur of speed, striking so quickly that it took all the mystic skill to hold him back. Hold him off. Too many backs. Too many backs. The axe bit deep into the joint at the shoulder, and the Lord Chancellor dropped his sword as he sank to his knees. Twice more the axe rose and fell, first severing an arm and then taking the head at the neck. The Lord Chancellor's body fell beneath the boots of his enemy, and the Shades roared their approval. With renewed vigor, they pressed forwards now, and Rogan led them in another charge. The palace guards had to retreat through the inner gate, but the guards atop the wall had been slain, and the portcullis remained raised. Lauren, Chet, and Jem threw themselves at one of the doors, struggling to push it closed against a mass of bodies. Lauren stood at the edge of the door, just a few paces away from the fighting. Her heart thundered, a steel flash, and blood soaked the pavement at her feet. "Hey, what's up, Clooney man?" "Lauren," cried Rogan, drawing her gaze. He wore a rictus grin, blood covering his armor. She saw the hilt of a sword sticking from the side of his breastplate where someone had landed a blow, but the necromancer's dark magic kept him on his feet. "Daughter of the forest, you've done your duty well. Thank you for laying the path of our conquest." She gritted her teeth and stepped away from the doorway to snatch her bow. In the blink of an eye she drew, and whether it was by Albern's training or some stroke of luck, her shaft sank into Rogan's left eye and out the back of his head. His body went limp as a rag doll, and he fell beneath the press of bodies. Beneath the press. Yeah, thank you. I'm growing to like them more and more myself. I think that they actually were a sort of a. I feel like this is gonna sound weird, but I feel like they kind of complete my look. Like I feel like they belong in a weird way. Anyway, thank you. The palace guards gave a great cheer and the shades wavered. The Lord Prince led a counterattack and they pushed their foes back through the gates. But the press of bodies was too thick beyond the walls and it was all they could do to push the gates closed. The royal guards seized the Lord Prince and the High King and dragged them back into the castle with Lauren and her friends hastening to follow. Chapter 35, that was a well-placed shot, said the Lord Prince. His helmet had been knocked loose in the fighting and Lauren saw a bruise blooming to life on his cheek. I had heard from Zane that you had no taste for killing. He will not die, said Lauren grimly. A dark enchantment protects him, binding him to life. Ah, screen. Yes, thank you. And thank you as well, Nightbot. Still, it secured our escape, and I thank you, said the High King, who had knelt to wrap a bandage about the thigh of one of her royal guards. The woman had taken an arrow in the leg. I thought about saying she took an arrow to the knee, but actually I'm gonna do it this way. Said the High King, who had knelt to wrap a bandage around the knee of one of her royal guards. The woman had taken an arrow. I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow to the knee. I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow to the knee. Oh man, that's amazing, actually. Ba-bum. Oh no, dominoes. Ba-ba-bum. Your Majesty, said Lauren impatiently. Then she turned on her heel and ran. You are welcome, Your Majesty, said Lauren. Lauren, said Chet, where are you going? Finding us an escape. she said. She took the stairs 2 at a time. Chet hastened to follow her, but he soon slowed, wincing at the injury in his chest. Though she wanted to scream with impatience, Lauren stopped and went down, taking his arm to help him. "Why go up?" said Chet. "We cannot fly away from here, but mayhap, but one never knows. Certainly it seems that the ground floor has no escape." She threw open a door leading to one of the wide-open balconies that ran all around the palace exterior. Below them, she could see the fighting at the eastern wall. She had expected Rogan stood at the head of his soldiers again. The gaping wound where his eye had been was already stitching itself shut. Lauren looked around in desperation, searching for some other way, some hidden door she had not noticed before. It seemed impossible. She had been a guest here less than a month. How could she find a new route of escape more easily than those who had lived in the palace their whole lives? But she had to try. She ran down the balcony, around a corner of the building, and the sun blinked as it vanished behind the arches for a moment. Chet nearly ran into her. She stopped in her tracks. When he saw her looking up, his gaze followed. "What is it?" She did not answer him. She was looking at the arches. The palace stretched out in 5 great wings. Along the top was a balcony, just like the one they stood on now, but 30 feet higher. And from the end of each wing sprang an arch, rising gently before dipping back down to meet the towers that stood at each of the 5 corners in the castle's outer wall. "Come with me," she said, and ran back into the palace. When she reached the High King, the royal guard were engaged in a furious argument with the Lord Prince about what to do next. Zane and Jem stood apart. Jem saw them and came running, eyes wide. "Where were you?" he said. "I thought you would run off and abandon us." "You are not so lucky as all that," said Lauren. "You must suffer our company a bit longer, quite a while longer, if I have my way." "What do you—" he began, but she pushed past him to speak with the High King. "Your Majesty," she said, cutting through the argument between the Lord Prince and the royal guard, "there may be a chance to get you to safety." They all stopped at that and stared at her, but where Lauren had quailed under their gaze in the throne room, now she had no time. She pressed on before they could answer. "We have no chance of victory by warfare, as any of us can plainly see. All the castle entrances are blocked. This is not a time for blades and armor, but for stealth and secrecy. Shed your... Shed your plate." "Shed your plate and follow me, and I can get you beyond the palace walls." "How?" said the Lord Prince, incredulous. "The arches. They stretch from the top of each wing to the towers. They are high, but they are wide enough to walk on and not too steep. But we have to go quickly, for it will be a dangerous crossing, and if they see us, they will try to shoot us down." "That is madness," said one of the royal guard. "It is 50 feet in the air." But Enelin studied Lauren's face, then turned... Enelin studied Lauren's face for a moment before turning to Eamon. "What is your counsel, Lord Prince?" He looked at Lauren's face and... he looked at Lauren. He looked at Lauren in wonder, and she could see the thought working its way through his mind. He began. Thoom! They heard a great crash outside and the roaring of an army. "They have broken the eastern gate," said one of the palace guard. "They are within the walls." "Enough," said Enelin. If they are in the walls already, we have no choice. Up the stairs and quickly." Lauren led the way, jumping up the steps like a satyr on a mountainside, with Chet and Jem by her side. Lauren led the way, jumping up the steps like a satyr on a mountainside, with Chet and Jem just behind. The High King followed while the Lord Prince helped Zane and his son make the climb. The High King followed while the Lord Prince helped Zane and his son make the climb. 4 of the royal guard came with them, the rest staying behind to guard the ground floor against the invaders. Up and up the stairs wound in a spiral, and Lauren ran past every floor. Only when she reached the top at last did she take the door leading out of the staircase and quickly turned about to get her bearings. In a moment she found the door leading outside and took it to another balcony. She went to the railing and looked down at the courtyard far below, where she saw the Shades doing battle with the palace soldiers on the pavement. The sight of it drew her gaze for a moment, but she forced herself to break away. A few paces farther along the balcony she found the spot where the arch joined the castle wall, some 2 paces below the balcony railing. It was not such a far drop, but it made Lauren dizzy now. The arch was perhaps 2 paces wide, and if they stumbled upon landing, it was another 15-pace fall to the courtyard below. That is not an easy jump, said Chet beside her. It is the only way. If only we had a rope. It is the only way. I wish we had a rope. I have a major problem with word echoes. Would that we had a rope. Would that we had a rope. There's one in my pack, but I left that in our quarters. The door opened behind them and the rest of the procession came out. Onto the balcony. Zane took one look at the height and reeled heavily away from the railing, but Jem stood brightly on tiptoe, leaning far over the edge. I made far more difficult leaps than this on the rooftops of Cabras, he remarked. Your Majesty, you cannot think to go through with this, said the royal guard. It is certain death. Certain death is the battle that rages in the palace even now, said Lorne. This is a hope, however slim. 2 paces is about how slim I would call it, said the Lord Prince. Unless someone is willing to suggest an alternative, my decision has been made, said Endelyn. Now help me out of this armor. She and Aemon and the royal guard shed their plate as quickly as they could. Lauren tried to help, though she knew little of how the pieces strapped together. Before long, they stood only in their regular clothing and light shirts of chain, which would not hinder their movement. Now, we must go down one at a time, said Lauren. We should send 1 or 2 ahead of the High King to help catch her and steady her landing. I will go first, said Chet, and before she could argue, he seized the railing and vaulted over the edge of the balcony. Chet, she cried, running to the rail. He landed hard on the stone of the archway, taking the shock of the landing with his legs and falling forwards. He spread his hands wide and gripped either edge of the stone path, holding himself steady. For a moment he lay there, recovering. Lauren could see the pain in his face where his wound had been jostled in the fall. Up, boy, called one of the royal guard. I'm coming down and have no wish to crush you. He was a burly man with a trimmed beard, somewhat advanced in 8 years, but still strong. As Chet scrambled to his feet, the guard lifted himself carefully over the railing, then held on to it as he lowered himself as far as he could. When he was at the limit of his reach, he dropped. Because he was facing backwards, he landed badly and fell onto his rear with a grunt, nearly rolling off the edge. But Chet gripped his shoulder to steady him, and he got back to his feet. Make haste, said Lauren, for she was looking past the arch to the ground far below. The Shades had broken through the soldiers in the courtyard. Even now they were in the palace, ransacking its halls in search of the High King. Your Majesty, are you ready? Send them first, said Endelyn, gesturing to Zane and his son. Your Majesty, Zane began. No time to argue, she snapped. Your son first, and then you. Zane took his son, Aaron, and held him under the arms. Look at me, son. I am right here. I will come right behind you. Be brave for me. Aaron nodded, though his eyes were filled with tears. Slowly, ever so slowly, Zane lowered him over the edge. Lauren helped, leaning over to grip one wrist while Zane held the other, and together they hung over as far over as they dared until the boy's ankles were just a pace above the outstretched arms of Chet and the royal guardsman. Lauren nodded to him, and they let go. Aaron fell into Chet's arms where he clung to his chest. You next, wizard, said Lauren. I can lower you down if you like. You cannot weigh more than a sack of potatoes. Zane glared at her a moment before climbing hastily over the rail. He landed without trouble, and then they lowered the High King. She jumped down quite nimbly, and Chet was there with her guard to steady her landing. The door to the balcony flew open, slamming into the wall with a crash. Lauren looked over her shoulder to see Shades run into the sunlight, sun gleaming from their gore-soaked blades. Run, she cried, waving desperately to Chet and the others. Get the High King to safety. Zane was already walking carefully along the arch with his son and was a good distance ahead. The royal guard looked up at her with a grim nod and seized the High King, dragging her away. Enelin fought him desperately, trying to return to the balcony. Aemon, she cried in anguish. Aemon, jump, said the Lord Prince, hefting his sword in his hand. We will do our best to hold them off. 3 royal guard remained with them on the balcony, and one of them spoke gruffly over his shoulder. No, Lord Prince, you must get to safety. We shall remain here. I'm afraid they are right, your highness, said Lauren. Forgive me. She nodded to Jem, and together they gripped Aemon's arms and half threw him over the railing. He went over the edge with a shout, and they held him at the last second before he dropped. Just before he had time to recover and try to climb back up, they let him go, and he fell to the arch. Chet caught him and dragged him back just as Lauren and Jem jumped over together. Jem had vaulted a bit farther and landed cat-like on the stone, but Lauren had misjudged the width of it and landed too close to the edge. As she fell forwards on her knees, her left hand came down on air instead of stone. She pitched to her left and for a terrifying moment hung out over empty space, and her body froze in terror. No, cried Chet. He leapt, landing in a slide on his back and gripping her tunic. Desperately, he dragged her back until she rolled over and came to land on top of him, her face less than an inch from his own. Keep your mind on the matter at hand, Hunter's son, she mumbled, but her voice shook as well as her hands where they gripped his shirt. It is not my mind that wanders, woodsman's daughter, he replied. If you two are quite done, cried Jem, who was already up and running along the arch, and had turned back to see the They scrambled to their feet and ran. Lauren raised one glance back only to see the royal guard holding the railing against the shades, but there were too many and one by one they fell. The last one took a blade to the gut, the tip of the sword thrusting out the back of his jerkin. He seized 2 of his foes and pitched backwards over the railing, and the shades screamed as their bodies fell to break on the pavement below. Lauren turned forwards and ran on. Hissing filled the air as arrows whizzed past them, but by now they were too far to get a clear shot, and soon the arch dipped back down to block them from view. The slope was gentle enough to keep firm footing, and soon they had reached the top of the tower at the end. There the others waited for them, but other than that the tower was empty. Lauren looked off down the walls to see them empty. Lauren looked off down the walls and saw no one. The shades had broken into the palace, and all the wall's guards had been slain already. They are coming, said the royal guardsman. Lauren turned to see that some shades had braved the jump, and even now came along the stone archway towards them. One more tried to jump as she watched, but he missed his landing and pitched off into empty space. They are foolish, said Zane. Lauren could see how it pained him, but still his eyes glowed as he summoned his magic. Flames burst forth, striking the shade in the lead, and she screamed as she beat at the fire. Lurching back, she struck the man behind her, and together they fell screaming from the arch. But more were coming down from the rail, and from somewhere they had found a rope. Even now they were tying it about the railing, and then they would be climbing, not jumping. Rope, said Lauren. We need to flee, not fight. The tower's hatch lay gaping open. She went down into it to search. There in the corner, she found what she was looking for. A long coil of rope, thick and strong and well woven. She threw the coil over her shoulder and climbed back out into the daylight. Chet helped her tie it around the tower's outer rampart with solid knots. Zane held the archway against the shades as they advanced, while one by one the others climbed down the tower's outer wall. Your turn, wizard, said Lauren. Go first, he said. I will be right behind you. Do I need to throw you again? He growled and turned, climbing down the rope. Lauren kept a careful eye on the archway, but the shades were too far away. As soon as Zane was far enough down, she followed him, and soon they were all fleeing through the streets of the city. Chapter 35 done. Sorry for the nail hygiene stream, but mine are pretty gross right now. Oh, hey, update. Today, right before lunch, I walked into town, and there's a pawn shop there run by a guy named Blair, who's a very interesting character. I think you have to be an interesting character to run a pawn shop, right? Anyway, dude's got a whole mess of amazing guitars. Like, really amazing guitars. And of course, it's a pawn shop, so they're cheap as fuck. Now, they're cheap as fuck compared to their retail costs, which doesn't necessarily mean they're actually as cheap as fuck. But he had an unstrung guitar with a missing back panel for like $30. And there's a guitar shop in McMinnville that'll string your guitar for like $10. So I'm gonna get a new guitar for like $40. And I made a deal with Megan. She was like, "More money for your birthday present?" And I was like, here's the deal. You don't have to get it for me until I finish Shadeborn and then The Alchemist's Touch. And then the restoration project is done and I'm working on a new book. And she was like, "Ooh. Yeah, all right, fine." Guitar. He had a bass, but the cheapest bass he had was like $80. So it looks like I'm gonna start doing Rocksmith on a guitar, which it's been even longer since I played a guitar than since I played a bass, but whatever. The guitar shop in McMinnville is called CHW Guitars. It's on the 99 strip somewhere, apparently. So there you go. Chapter 36. The greater part of the fighting had moved within the palace, but there was still much of it in the streets. They had to move cautiously, ducking out of sight whenever a group of shades came running by. They'd climbed down the northwest tower of the palace wall and did not have far to go to reach the western gate, but the way was slow and they could not take the main streets, for those were well patrolled. Lauren felt as though she were suffering the fall of Northwood all over again. For all about them, they saw the corpses of citizens in the streets. Only this time, she was the one escorting others out of the city's destruction rather than the one being rescued. She made a silent vow to herself. Oh, the pawn shop. Yeah, it's right down the street. I mean, it's in Lafayette. It's not in McMinnville. It's a 15-minute walk from the house. And it's kind of like off the main road a little bit. It's an interesting place. It's a sort of place where you have to, like, when you get there, like, the door was locked, so I had to call the guy to come let me in. And when he did, he was like, "Oh, careful as you're walking in, like, don't step on the air compressor that's right in the middle of the main aisle." And he was like, "Oh, okay, this is one of those joints." She made a silent vow to herself. If need be, she would give her life to save the High Kings in token of payment for Mag, who had sacrificed herself for Lauren. They heard the tramping of Mag and Albern. Hello. She just forget about Albern? She made a silent vow to herself. If need be, she would give her life to save the High Kings in token of payment for Mag and Albern, who had sacrificed. And Sten. I mean, Sten, Lauren. Neither Lauren nor the reader cares as much about Sten. In token of payment for Mag, Sten, and Albern, who had sacrificed their lives for Lauren. They heard the tramping of boots and pressed themselves against the wall of a shop. Shades ran by along the street and towards the palace. Lauren leaned out to watch after they had gone, ensuring they were out of sight. "How will we reach the western gate?" said Aemon. "Surely they will have it guarded, especially if they know we have escaped the palace." We may be able to break through, said Zane. I have my magic and you have your blades. Swords we have, but no armor, unlike our enemies. And forgive me for saying so, my friend, but you are nearly at the end of your strength. Enelin turned to Lauren. What say you, girl? We've made it this far by your counsel. I do not know, your majesty, said Lauren. In truth, I had not thought that far ahead, for I was not certain we would escape the palace at all. How comforting, said Enelin. Enelin is pretty badass. We scaled one wall, said Chet. We can scale another. Where can we go where the shades will not be gathered in strength, where we can make our way into a tower and then down the other side? To the north, said the Lord Prince, but the problem is not the city wall, it is the docks. They will all be swarming with shades, and we cannot escape the island without a boat. One bridge at a time, my lord, said Chet. If we can make it beyond the north wall, then let us go to the north wall. I see you share Lauren's gift for not thinking far ahead, said Enelin. But Lauren was looking out beyond the edge of the building, her brow furrowed in concentration. Not far away, a strong wind whipped at the banners that flew from the western wall. They have not burned the buildings, she said. Zane looked at her sharply. What? They have not burned the buildings. In Wellmont, the Dortian army sought to burn as much as they could. Here the shades are sacking the city, but they are not trying to destroy it. Why? Likely they mean to occupy it, said Eamon. If they can take the seat for themselves, it will be a demonstration of their power. No, said Enelin, eyes widening. They cannot risk their fleet. If the flames spread from the city to the docks, their ships will be destroyed. Then they will be trapped here, unable to flee if we should attack them in strength. I do not see how that can help us, said Zane, unless we mean to burn the city down ourselves in the hope that it spreads to their ships. I think that is precisely what Lauren has planned, said Enelin with a grim smile. Lauren turned to them. The ship's crews will have remained with their vessels as well as some soldiers to guard them. If they see the city beginning to burn, they may leave the ships to come and fight the fires. We could slip past them then to take a ship for ourselves and flee. Eamon stared at her as if she had gone mad. You mean to burn our own city? It is lost already, said Enelin, who had begun to nod. I think this plan may be a wise one, a strange sort of wisdom, certainly, and yet it may work. Zane, can you muster the flame? Said Lauren. His skin was pale and his arm shivered as it wrapped around his son's shoulders. I have little strength left, but I will do what I must. You may not have to, said Lauren, struck by a thought. Torches will suffice. Find them on the walls and collect them as we move to the western wall. Torches will suffice. Find them and collect more as we move to the western wall. We will set flames wherever we think they may catch. Can you muster the flames, wizard? Said the royal guard. Zane's skin was pale and his arm shivered as it wrapped around his son's shoulders. I have little strength left, but I will do what I must. You may not have to, said Lauren, struck by a thought. Torches will suffice. Deep in thought, indeed. Find them on the walls and collect them as we moved. Find them and collect more as we move towards the western wall. As we move to the western wall, we will set flames wherever we think they may catch. Then, Zane, you can spread the fires with wind. That would be easier, he said. Let us go then, and quickly, said Enelin. They set off once more, this time faster, for their steps held purpose again. Many fixtures in the wall held torches. Many fixtures on buildings held torches, and soon each of them had collected a great armful. When they reached the western wall, they looked all about to see if there were any shades nearby to spot them, but none were about. Seriously? They looked to see if any shades were nearby to spot them. When they reached the west wall, they looked to see if any shades were nearby to spot them, but none were about. One torch sat in a fixture on the wall above them, but rather than remove it, Zalorn had Zane light it. Then, one by one, she held the other torches in its flames until they caught. She, Chet, and Jem ran out and among the buildings. Any place they found a shop with wooden shingles or an inn with a stable full of hay, they flung their torches. Soon smoke rose from several buildings. Before long, the smoke turned into flames. They reached for the sky with angry red fingers, and their heat filled the air. Now use your magic, Zane, said Lauren. Eyes glowing wide, he put forth his power. The air howled and whistled before his hands, and a heavy gale swept in from the sky. It struck the houses and carried the flames south, throwing sparks and flaming brands across all the western side of the city. In no time, it seemed that half the island was burning. Casting her cloak about her, Lauren ran to the western gate. As she neared it, she slowed, searching warily for anyone who might spot her. But no one was in sight as she sidled up to the gate. The great wooden doors lay broken upon the ground, torn from their hinges by a battering ram, or else by some powerful magic. The portcullis still hung in the air. The attackers must have raised it during their assault. She peered around the corner of the wall towards the docks, and her heart sang. There were the shades who had been left to guard the ships, and they were running towards the city walls. Behind them, the ship crews streamed from their vessels, carrying buckets which they dipped into the waters of the bay. Hastily, she withdrew and ran back to the others. It worked, she said. They are running to douse the flames. We should get closer to the gates and be ready to run the moment we find an opening. Step by step, they followed her forwards, coughing and casting their cloaks across their mouths to stop themselves from breathing in the soot. Zane's son buried his head in his father's shoulder, crying. Lauren soon realized she did not have to worry over much about being spotted. The smoke that poured through the streets, as well as the scorching heat of the flames, kept the shades' attention. Sometimes they passed soldiers only a few paces away in the smoke, but attracted no notice. Soon they emerged coughing, running as quick as they could into the open square before the western gate, but the moment the smoke left their eyes, they skidded to a halt on the paving stones. There stood Rogan, framed by the gate. His axe and shield were battered and stained, and his armor bore many rents from blows he had taken in the fighting. He stood alone, for all his soldiers were in the city to fight the fires, but Lauren quaked in her boots, for she knew that he was easily a match for all of them. I see I was right, said Rogan. As soon as I saw the smoke rising from the city, I knew you were making for the boats. A clever tactic. Her throat was dry, but Chet stepped forwards to stand at her side, and Jem and Eamon with him. You may stand aside if you wish, said the Lord Prince. I swear we will let you live. Rogan laughed at that, blood standing out shockingly red against the white of his teeth. A precious sentiment, Princeling. Here is my counter. Kneel and present your necks for my axe, and I will make the killing quick. Remember the tattoo. You cannot defeat him, Lauren said quietly. Then she turned to Zane and the royal guard who stood by the High King. Get yourselves out of the city and the High King as well. We will hold him off as long as we can. I will not leave my son, said Enelin. You will if you must, your majesty, said Lauren firmly. If he will not run from this fight, still you must reach the shores of Selvin in safety. What are you whispering there, Nightblade, said Rogan. I think you have used your last clever strategy. Come, let us make this quick. There's no need for you to suffer as Jordell did. Lauren turned on him. Her bow was light in her hand, and she ached to use it. You may not speak his name. Rogan smiled, and despite all she knew of him, it looked kind. You truly loved the mystic, did you not? The look in your eyes, it is almost worship. He should not have died. He should have been on our side. I can only imagine the sort of captain he would have made in our ranks. I am what he could have been, but better, for I will never die. She knocked the arrow without thinking and loosed. It spread true, but Rogan lifted his shield to block it. Then he was charging forwards, and Eamon met the first blow with his sword. Get her away, cried Lauren. Enelin began to circle around, making for the gate under the escort of her guard. Zane only stood there, looking at Lauren in wordless fury. Go, she said. You remember what happened when you tried your magic on Tristan. You are even more useless here than I am. He nodded and followed the High King, his son in tow. Lauren turned, another arrow knocked. Gemmet edged forward, his sword held forth, but his hands shook and he looked ready to flee at any moment. Chet was a couple of paces ahead, holding a staff, but he seemed just as lost. They knew, as Lauren did, that they stood no chance against Rogan. They could only distract him. But Eamon was doing a remarkable job of that for the moment. He matched the brute stroke for stroke, and even without a shield, his guard was impenetrable. His armor had been left atop the palace, and he used that to his advantage, dodging around blows rather than trying to meet them head-on, and returning light, quick strikes that Rogan had to move quickly to avoid. He hoped to tire his opponent, who was burdened by his armor, and then move in for the final blow. As Eamon and Rogan backed away from each other for a moment, Lauren drew and fired. The arrow glanced from Rogan's pauldron, knocking it sideways. Chet swung with his staff, and Jem took another step forwards, but Rogan recovered quickly and blocked the staff with his shield, then swung wide, forcing them both back. Eamon lunged and struck again, and his blade found purchase in Rogan's hip. The brute grunted and stepped back, hiding behind his shield. I had heard you were a mighty warrior, said Eamon lightly, but it looks as though your enchantment is your only strength. It is strength enough, said Rogan with a smile. Lauren looked past him to the gate. Enelin and Zane had almost reached it, her guard at her back. Rogan's attention was on the Lord Prince. It was going to work, but that hope proved false. Rogan whirled on the spot as though he had eyes in the back of his head and came at them in a rush. Eamon ran to follow as the king's guard stepped forwards to block her. But with three swift strokes, Rogan knocked the man's sword aside and planted his axe in the guard's chest. He sank to his knees with a grunt, dropping the sword to grip the axe with both hands. That gave Eamon a moment's advantage. He plunged his sword into Rogan's back beneath the backplate. Rogan cried out in pain, arching backwards and grasping at the hilt of the sword. It was out of his reach, and Eamon held fast, pushing him away from the High King. Go, cried Lauren. She slung her bow on her back and ran forward, seizing Jem's and Chet's arms and dragging them through the gate. Enelin was beside them, and Zane with his son. Just beyond the wall, she stopped and turned to look. Still, Eamon held Rogan like a pig on a spit, but Lauren could see the glow of dark magic around the Shade Captain's neck. And already his flesh stitched itself together around the blade. Like a snake he turned, ripping the hilt from Eamon's hand. His mailed fist crashed into the Lord Prince's face, then his chest. Lauren had a horrifying flash of memory of the way Jordel's chest had caved in under Triscan's mighty blows. Eamon struggled to hold his feet, but Rogan struck him hard with both fists clenched, and he went flying to land on the ground beside Lauren. Impotent children, snarled Rogan. Come here that I may show you the true power of death. He took a step forwards and then stopped to look down. The royal guard still lived. Somehow. And had wrapped an arm around one of Rogan's ankles. The head of the axe was still buried in his chest. With what remained of his strength, the guard used his free hand to pull it out with a roar. He flung it away, and it went skidding across the pavement towards Lauren's feet. Girl, he cried, the chain. Lauren's eyes widened. She ran to the axe and wrapped both hands around its haft. Rogan, oblivious, tore his plated boot free from the guard's grip. The foot came up and then down with a horrifying crunch. Again and again he stamped until the sound of it grew horrible and wet. His gaze rose to Lauren, bloodlust making his eyes nearly glow. She stood facing him at the edge of the gate. All her strength barely enough to lift the axe. Rogan bared his teeth in a grin and then threw back his head to laugh aloud. What do you mean to do with an axe you can scarcely even wield, girl? You cannot kill me. I know, said Lauren, and swung with all her might at the chain that held the portcullis. Rogan barely had time to look up before it came crashing down, crushing him under its weight. 2 of the 3-foot spikes along its bottom pierced his chest, sinking into the stone below while he screamed in agony. Lauren dropped the axe and ran, helping Lord Prince Aemon to his feet. Rejoining the others, they fled to the docks where a fleet of boats waited for them to sail away on. So awesome. I mean, tooting my own horn, fully admit, but just that, like, you can't kill me. And she's like, yeah. Like, that's literally the reason I'm doing this. Ha ha! I love it. It's one of my proudest moments. Oh, my precious little baby, Lauren. Chapter 37. The gates of the Palace of Garsek, Selvin's capital city, swung open before them, limping and sore. Lauren and the others made their way through. Inside stood Anwar, king of Selvin, along with a retinue to receive them. Quickly his healers ran forwards, their white robes swishing about their feet to tend to Enelin. I am well, she said, waving them off. See the Lord Prince and the others. Anwar came forwards at once, taking a knee before her. Anwar. That's a name. I am well, she said, waving them off. See to the Lord Prince and the others. Anwar came forwards at once, taking a knee before her. Your Majesty, he said, I cannot express my relief at seeing you alive and well. Enelin reached down and took his hands, drawing him to his feet. King Anwar, thank you for your hospitality in our time of need. I could do no less, he said earnestly. I blame myself for this. With so many of our soldiers south in Wellmont, we did not keep watch over the Great Bay and did not see the attack upon the seed until too late. You could not have known. Lauren watched as the healer saw to Lord Prince Aemon's injuries. They were bruises only and would heal with time. He kept trying to push them off, but with the High King's command ringing in their ears, they would not leave him alone. They had sailed a short distance southwest across the water and to the docks of Garsek, and immediately sent word of the High King's arrival. While they waited for a carriage to be sent, they had stood upon the docks and watched the seed across the water. The smoke grew thicker and thicker until the orange glow of the flames could be seen all across the island. The fires they had set consumed nearly everything until the shades were forced to flee the island's destruction. Across the strait they sailed, to land on the coast and vanish once more into the birchwood. Meanwhile, the Dulmoon fleet set sail for the east, returning to their homeland to plot their next stroke. One whole kingdom had risen in rebellion against the High King that day, and who knew which others held treason in their hearts? You're deep in thought, girl. Lauren blinked and then ducked her head in a half bow. While she had been distracted looking out through the palace gates, Enelin had approached from behind. I apologize, your majesty. Do not. I too find my mind much occupied. Will you walk with me? Lauren nodded, and Enelin led her out through the gate. The palace sat upon a great hill, almost a mountain in the middle of the city. Outside its walls was a wide open space from which they could survey the city and all the lands beyond. Enelin took her north, where far away they could see the green of the birchwood. There she stopped and stared at the forest for a while. Just as Lauren was beginning to grow uncomfortable in the silence, the High King spoke. I owe you a great debt, many times over, in fact. Lauren shook her head quickly. I did only the duty that was passed down to me. Many do their duty. Sometimes that duty requires much of us, and carrying it out should be seen as a fine thing. As you say, your majesty. Enelin turned to her suddenly, meeting her gaze unflinching, and Lauren felt overshadowed despite standing a head taller. I have need of those with honest and loyal hearts. I have had many such servants, but they are all of a type. Like the Lord Chancellor or even my son, they think only of the great battle, the wartime stratagem. We need something else now. The great strength of the Shades is not their might of arms. The strength of the Shades is not their might of arms, but the plans they hatch when they believe we cannot see them. Indeed, it seems we cannot. None of us knew their plans, and thus we played the very game they set out for us. Enelin looked into her eyes. That is what I mean to fix, if you will help me. Lauren balked. Your majesty? I do not understand. I would have you enter my service, Lauren of the family Nelda, my personal service, answerable to me under the direction and guidance of Chancellor Cal, to whom it seems I should have been listening for some time now. You desire my service, said Lauren. She could not wrap her mind around the idea. I am a simple forest girl, she told herself, a daughter of the birchwood, and yet here she stood, and there was the High King. Your Majesty, I do not know what to say. Say you will serve me, of course, said Annalyn, but she softened it with a smile. Lauren fell to her knee at once. Of course, Your Majesty, you do me great honor, but what am I exactly? I have told you your task already. Lauren shook her head. That is not what I mean. I will be the agent of your will, but what am I? When I act in your name, what will I call myself? Your advisor? Your messenger? Your title? There's a name already, I hear, in the stories people whisper about you. Let that be your title. Let them call you my Nightblade. Get the next book. You finish Shadeborn, the 4th book in the Nightblade Epic. Your next book is Weremage. Get it here, underrealm.net/Weremage. Connect online. Facebook. Want to hang out with other fans of the Underrealm books? This is a Facebook group where you can do just that. Join the Nine Lands group on Facebook and share your favorite moments and fan theories from the books. I also post regular behind-the-scenes content, including information about the world you can't find anywhere else. Visit the link to be taken to the Facebook group, underrealm.net/9-lands. YouTube. Catch up with me daily when I'm not directing a film or having a baby. You can watch my YouTube channel where I talk about art, science, life, my books, and the world, but not cats. Never cats. GarrettBRobinson.com/YT. The books of Underrealm, the Nightblade Epic, Nightblade, Mystic, Darkfire, Shadeborn, Weremage, Yaren, the Academy Journals, The Alchemist's Touch, The Fire Mage's Wrath, The Fire Mage's Vengeance, Chronological Order, Nightblade, Mystic, Darkfire, Shadeborn, The Alchemist's Touch, Weremage. No. That chronological order. Alchemist's Touch, Mind Mage's Wrath, Weremage, Fire Mage's Vengeance, and Yaren. About the author, Gary Robinson was born and raised in Los Angeles, son of an author, painter, father, and violinist, singer, and mother, and I was surprised when he grew up to be an artist. After blooding himself in the independent film industry, he self-published his first book in 2012 and swiftly followed it with a stream of others, publishing more than 2 million words by 2014. Within months, he topped numerous Amazon bestseller lists. Now he spends his time writing books and directing films. Passionate fantasy author, his most popular books are the novels of Underrealm, including the Nightblade Epic and the Academy Journal series. However, he has delved into many other genres. Some works for adult audiences only, such as Non-Zombie and Hit Girls, but he's also published popular books for younger readers, including the Realmkeeper series and The Ninjabread Man, co-authored with Z.C. Bolger. Gary lives in Oregon with his wife Megan, his children Don, Luke, and Desmond, and his dog Chewbacca. Garrett can be found on GarrettBRobinson.com/blog, Garrett at GarrettBRobinson.com, Twitter.com/GarrettAuthor, Facebook.com/GarrettBRobinson. Epilogue. Rogan's boots shuffled uncertainly through the soil of the birchwood, and his path swayed back and forth. He tried to muster a strength that would not do for the shades at his back to see the commander weak and wandering. His hand went to his chest with a grimace. Still the wounds had not fully healed, where the portcullis had punched through plate, flesh, and bone all at once. His teeth ground together. He did not fear his father's wrath, but only the thought of failing him. Rogan was the favored son. All his life it had been said to him, and now he had failed the man to whom he owed everything. Are you disappointed, my son? Rogan staggered to a halt, as did the soldiers behind him, his eyes filled with tears at the voice. Wait here, he said, keeping his back turned so that they could not see his face. Do not move until I give the order. He stalked off into the woods towards where he had heard the voice. He did not have to search far before he stopped, the tears spilling down his cheeks. Father, he whimpered. He sank to his knees, leaves crunching beneath him. My father, forgive me. Forgive? You committed no sin, child. Stand. This was no fault of yours. He bowed his head. I took the task upon myself. Tomorrow should have been a day of rejoicing. We should have sent word to all the 9 lands that the High King was dead and the Lord Prince captured. I gave you your task, Rogan. The blame lies with me, not with you. Rogan shook his head fervently, almost maniacally. No, no, father. You are the greatest among us. No design of yours is at fault. I am your arm meant to carry out your aims, and I am weak. He felt the fingers resting on the top of his head, gently stroking his hair. His tears fell harder, and he curled in upon himself at the touch. When Triskin fell in the Great Rocks, I was wrathful. I held him accountable, for I thought he had underestimated the girl. But now I have made the same mistake. She was the perfect messenger, but I did not think she could save the High King. I should have stopped her, whimpered Rogan. Forgive me. You are forgiven. Her victory will soon be hollow, like wine turned to ash in her throat. The High King has lost this war before it has begun, for I have found the trail of my great foe, and soon my children will bring her to me. Rogan tensed, eyes glittering, and he looked up with hope. You have found the life mage? He was answered only by a smile. Now there's a page thingy here. Oh. Wait, what? Really? 35? Next thing is Weremage? Correct page numbers? Okay. Okay. Good stuff. motherfucker. Ooh, shit. I should have saved a new version of this, but whatever. Save a new version now, I guess. Ba-da-ba-bum, bum, ba-da-ba-dum, bum. Ba-da-ba-bum, ba-da-bum, ba-dum, bum. Up-ba-da-bum, ba-da-bum, ba-bum. Bum, bum, ba-da-bum, ba-da-ba-dum, bum, ba-da-ba-dum. Ba-da-ba-bum. We finished a book, y'all. Now I just have to get it submitted and shit. I just got actually a teenage dream. Wait, what? Let's look at our calendar here. What dates are we looking at? Okay. So we order Yeah, that's a little bit more like what I thought was the case. February 6th. That doesn't seem right. But I guess it is. Yeah. December 2nd. Hey, what's up, Wordwin? December 2nd again. December 20th. December 21st. January 6th. January 18th. And January 20th. Okay. January 4th. Okay, so we have to plan for 3-week delivery on Lightning Source. Fantastic. Love it. Love it. Oh, I'm glad you like it. Yeah, it came out really well on the cover too. Although this is the color space on this cover is all messed up, but it looks pretty good on camera. In person, the colors are a little bit off, but the typography came out real nice. So, yay! Plan is indeed coming together, and I love it when a plan comes together. Okay, so now we do these tasks. What's our average delivery on create space? About a week. Okay, so we'll call it we can go 2 weeks. Wednesday, 29th. April 4th. So that's going to be March 28th meeting. Sarah's on April 6th. April 6th. Da, 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 da. 8. All right, later, Wordwin. I have to go. I have to go help put my family to bed as well because the kids are not making it easy on Megan. So I'm going to go. Thanks so much for watching. This book's done all over bar the shouting. We'll create a listing and we'll start sending out emails to the list and everything like that. So you'll catch the rest of it in production very, very soon. One more step done on the restoration project. I might stream a little bit later tonight, working on Alchemist Touch, but I might not. Kind of depends on how bedtime with the kids goes. Either way, if I don't see you later tonight, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Catch you later. Bye!